Today we're going to build this folio right here using liquid glue. If you'd like to see this folio constructed using double-sided tape, go ahead and check out video number 2. And if you'd like to see it constructed using a tape runner or ATG, check out video number 3. If you enjoy this video, be sure and click that like button, share, and subscribe. Okay folks, today we're gonna work on the covers for our folios. And here is an example of one that I've already created just as a test run. And the paper pack that we're using, or that I'm using, obviously you don't need to use the same pack, is Christmas Farmhouse by Craftsmart. You can get this at Michael's. I know they had it available at my Michael's in December 2019, and I expect it'll probably be available December 2020 as well. For the chipboard, we are going to be using cereal boxes. Because we're not going to be putting a whole lot of weight on these folios, we don't need to use the thicker chipboard, and you can instead just upcycle your cereal boxes. A lot of other dry food boxes can be upcycled. In fact, I think I've got an upcycled potato flakes box or rice or something, I forget what, but mostly cereal boxes. For today's video, for the covers, here's the supply list for this project. We're gonna need 1 3/4 inch by 6 inch chipboard, 2 4.5 inch by 6.5 inch chipboard, solid cardstock, 2 6.5 by 8.5, and 1 1 3/4 by 8.5. And also, if you're gonna do the closure, which let me show you the closure. This is optional. It's not, doesn't have to be part of this, but this is the magnet closure. So if you want to include that, then you'll also need a 2x6 strip of solid cardstock. For the pattern papers, for the covers, we're going to need one piece at 9 3/4 by 6 1/4, 2 at 4 by 6, 1 at 1/4 by 6. And if you're gonna do the closure, you're gonna need 2 pieces at 1 3/4 by 4 3/4. However, we're gonna hold off on adding that today. We're gonna actually add that when we put together the waterfall and add the magnets. Other things that you're gonna need today are some kind of adhesive. So I'm gonna do a couple of these. I have 7 total to do. These are gonna be gifts for my coworkers. So I'm gonna do some with liquid glue, some with rolled double-sided tape, liquid glue, and an ATG. All right, so I've got most of the chipboard already cut, so I'm just going to show you how to disassemble and cut up a cereal box or a larger chipboard type box. This particular trimmer is one I recently purchased. Since I don't have small children at home, we're okay with having a guillotine style trimmer. If you have small children at home, you probably don't want a guillotine style trimmer. I can tell you from personal experience that just touching this blade, let me get it in focus there, just touching this blade right here is enough to cut you. So you have to be very, very careful with that. I'm trimming off the edges of the box and getting it trimmed down to where it's about 12 inches from here to here. Because I need it to fit this way. So the chipboard that we need is 4.5 by 6.5. I'm gonna trim off this bit right here. Oops, that did not trim straight, but that's okay, we can make up for that. So we're gonna go ahead and cut this down to, I'm gonna go ahead, I'm actually gonna retrim that. And I found with, if you have this trimmer from Swingline, probably the best place to align it is right here. Sometimes if I align it up here, it's not quite right. So if you align it right there, see, it's gonna be a little bit past the 4.5 mark there. So here is the beginning of our first album, and because I had 7 of these and I went ahead and I cut everything up and labeled all of these, this is going to be hidden. So even though it says cover 7/1, cover 7/2, it's actually going to be covered up with that, so you won't be able to see it. This first album, I'm going to use liquid glue. This is Aleene's original tacky glue. You can get it pretty inexpensively. I bought it in bulk from Amazon. I will be sure to put links to as many of the products as I can find in the description box down below. Other popular brands are Beacon's Fabri-Tac. I see a lot of crafters using that one a lot. Aleene's also works pretty well. So I'm gonna get pretty close to the corner here and stay fairly close to the edge. I don't want to go over the edge or get right up on the edge, otherwise you could end up with a little bit of a gluey mess. But I want to be sure that this writing is facing up, and I'm just going to eyeball this. Some products I do, it does have to be pretty well centered. This one does not. Another thing that is helpful to have is some type of folding tool. This came with We Are Memory Keepers. This is a card making system. It's meant to be able to do fold the cards and create the envelopes, which I do. It's a very, it's a fun way to help use up the rest of my scraps, and I really enjoy card making. So I'm just going to burnish this. This just helps make sure that the adhesive has a good wide area to bond with the paper. And I did have some glue come out there, so. And we're gonna repeat that with this one. And with the liquid glue, you're gonna wanna keep the cap on that. So before I even start burnishing it down, I go ahead and cap that glue. Otherwise, it just clogs up. It dries in the nozzle and becomes a big old mess. Okay, the next thing that we want to do is we want to miter the edges of this paper. If we were to just kind of fold it over on all 4 corners, then we're gonna have a big bulky mess of paper right there and right there. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna trim off some of that excess. And I don't go in a perfect 45-degree angle. I find when I do, I usually miscalculate it and end up having gaps where there's no coverage on the cardstock. See, a perfect 45-degree angle would be to just go straight across, which we don't necessarily want to do that. And another thing that I do, then I'm gonna see if I can get the camera to focus on it, is, come on camera, focus on it. There we go. There is a little bit of a gap between the corner and my cut. And the reason for that is it gives the paper a little bit of coverage to cover that corner. And we're gonna end up folding that over. And the width of that gap, a good rule of thumb is to make it about the width of your chipboard. Now this chipboard is really thin, and that gap is probably a little bit thicker, a little wider than the thickness of my chipboard, and that's okay. I would rather it be a little bit too wide than a little bit too thin. And also, because these folios aren't going to be carrying a lot of weight, we don't need to use the heavyweight cardstock for this. You can use a lighter weight. You can, 65 pounds is fine for this cover. If you go too much lighter, then you might run into issues with show through. And it's showing through a very little bit here, and I'm not worried about that because we're going to cover that up with pattern paper. The next step is to start gently folding these edges. And it doesn't really matter whether you start with the long edge first or the short edge first. Some people have a preference, I don't. So I'm just going to gently fold that up to try to get a good crease. And then fold that over. Some paper is prone to cracking. And if you have a paper that is a white core paper, which I think I have some that I'm going to be using on this project that's a white core, so I'm going to have to be careful with that, then what'll happen is you'll start to see the white of the paper through the cracks. It'll start cracking along in there, and there'll be like little white jagged cracks. And we don't want that. So now we're going to glue this edge down. And I'm sorry if my hair's getting in the way. I have really long hair, and sometimes it just does its own thing. Here, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to fold this corner over. I don't know if you can tell. There we go. It's got a little bit of a gap there. We're going to go ahead and tuck that in. We have two covers with minimal cracking. Now we're going to attach the spine. And here is the spine piece. If you have a big enough cardstock, you could actually do this all in one piece. My cardstock is all 8.5 by 11, so I wouldn't have quite, I'm like a 1/4 of an inch short from being able to do this with an 8.5 by 11. So the first thing is gonna be to add the spine chipboard to the spine piece. And you're gonna wanna get it pretty close to center. Burnish that down. Now, we're gonna attach the spine to the covers. To do that, I'm gonna start on the spine covering, and I'm sorry, my husband's cat is having an attention fit right now, so if you can hear her, she's fine. She's just really wanting somebody to come pay attention to her. So we're gonna start here on pretty close to the edge here. Because what we're gonna do with the glue is this piece, the spine piece, is gonna connect to the cover here, and they're gonna like grab each other like that to help create a secure hold. And then on the cover piece, we're gonna come the entire length of the edge and just go right along the edge like that. We want to leave a gap of about, with this chipboard, a 1/16 of an inch is probably fine. I'm gonna go ahead and take a 1/8 of an inch gap and just press that down. And that gap is going to give the folio the flexibility to open and close. If I didn't have that gap, so you can see where some cracking happened on this one. Right there, if I can focus. Yeah, there's some cracking right there. And what I'm gonna do with that is I'm gonna go over it with Distress ink to help hide that cracking. All right, and then we're gonna repeat this on the other side. Going to run some glue along the leading edges here and here. That down. Go ahead and I'm going to score right there. The next thing to lay down, see, now we've got our complete cover there, all put together. And that is not laying down the way I want it to, so I'm gonna go ahead and burnish it down again. It can take the glue a little bit longer to dry, so it doesn't hurt to go back over it one more time with your folding tool. Now we're going to lay this down right here. I'm going to do that with glue. Try to center that. I'm gonna eyeball it as best I can. That looks pretty good. Of course, I'm probably gonna come back, you know, a day or two later and go, wow, Katie, that was really, what on earth were you thinking? You know what I forgot to do? I forgot to do something really important. And this happens. I'm gonna have to pull this up, and I'm glad I did use glue. I'm gonna have to pull this up. I'm gonna have to put a place marker there. I've got to insert the closure. So the enclosure, I'm gonna go ahead and grab this again. The closure needs to be scored in 2 places, and the reason for that is that it's gonna be enclosing a pretty sizable chunk, and I want to make sure that the magnets will be able to grab, so I'm actually going to score it twice. I'm going to score it, since this is 6 inches, I'm going to score it first at 5.5 and again at 5. Sure that's nice and crisp. So now it's going to sit over the waterfall like that. All right, well, this is going to be the bottom. So we're going to eyeball the center and glue that down. It's probably wildly off center, but we're gonna glue that back. Lots and lots of glue. Back down. And now the inside piece is covering that flap. All right, the last pieces that we're going to add to this folio tonight are the covers. So this is the cover that I've chosen for the front. So we're going to glue that down. And this is the back cover. This pattern paper has a direction. There is a definite up and down. And as you can see, I'm currently holding it upside down, so I want to make sure I flip it over and I have it right side up. And we're gonna center this top to bottom. And I'm eyeballing this gap on the side, just trying to make sure that the gap on the side is about even with the gap from top to bottom. We're gonna find, here we go, score that on this side as well, so that we can see kind of where the spine is. And this is the cover for the spine. I'll line it up top to bottom with these 2 pieces and center it between the score marks. And burnish it down. All right, we are almost done with this cover. The next step is going to be to gently bend this cover, and we're going to watch for gaps and bowing occurring here in the center cover, because we'll want to make sure we burnish that down. So I already see some forming right there. we have a folio cover. We're going to set this one aside and start on the next one. The liquid glue has held up really well in terms of time invested. It landed right in the middle between the ATG and the double-sided tape, even with drying time. And if you're going to batch these, make a whole bunch of them at once, you can always set one aside to dry as you're working on the other, and things will go really quickly. Be sure to check out this week's other videos. Video number 2 is with double-sided tape. Video number 3 is with ATG. Next week, we're going to do the insides. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.